So as a state trooper, I respond to multiple crashes every single year of vehicles that are involved in a deer crash. And I just had one not too long ago that involved a family that was traveling the great state of Wyoming, and it was dark out. There's 3 small children, his wife in the front passenger seat. He was definitely fortunate that nobody was hurt. So not all families are that fortunate. A few years back, I had a crash that I was working a night shift, and all of a sudden I got a call for service that was a crash of injury involving a deer, and there was a mom who was driving the vehicle and the daughter was in the front passenger seat. The mom was deceased on scene, so not all stories end the same.
One of my earliest memories is a memory of a cousin of mine that was killed, unfortunately, when she was in her 20s. She never got to live life and enjoy the wildlife and the scenery of Wyoming. So wildlife vehicle collisions and the wildlife fund's role in that is very important to me. It was the impetus for me to walk away from another career and come to Wyoming and do what I can do to avoid that very situation for future generations and for other people.
What's a human's life worth? In my opinion, these crossings are cheap. It's immeasurable. It's immeasurable. And wildlife crossings are 100% behind saving lives. There's just no doubt about it.
This is very much about protecting those that are traveling on our roadways, just as much as it's about saving our wildlife. We have 21 big game collisions a day in Wyoming, 7,500 wildlife that are killed every single year in Wyoming, and these are incredibly conservative numbers. There's researchers that say you could put a multiplying factor of 4 on that number. So let's be conservative. Let's say we lose 15,000 big game animals in Wyoming every single year. The majority of these collisions are happening with mule deer, the icon of the West. And mule deer have been struggling so much in our state. The numbers are absolutely plummeting. The cost of wildlife vehicle collisions in Wyoming on an annual basis is roughly $54 to $56 million. So you really can start to make an economic argument for these projects that by saving wildlife, they pay for themselves year over year over year. And then also the human injury component, you cannot put a price tag on saving someone's life.
I'll start by saying that in Wyoming, we have a great value for wildlife. Here several years ago, the state, coupled with the passion that people had for our wildlife and the need to try to address this problem, did an evaluation of the current science, the current information that we had across the state on where these collisions were happening, where people's property were being damaged and where we were losing wildlife, and we decided to prioritize those areas where we can have the most impact on public safety and our big game populations. And so we went to work, started fundraising, and we really showed folks that when you put the passion for wildlife and public safety together with science, you can do really cool projects.
I think as we expand this type of work, that we can continue to be more creative and more unique in our approach that work to the specific area, the specific needs of whatever the problem you're working on. And given the reality of the landscape, this is a great solution, and we can actually get it done.
This project's a little bit unique. You hear a lot about migratory animals crossing interstates or highways and actions we've taken to reduce those mortalities, but this is a fairly residential group of deer. They're just utilizing that right away to feed mostly, not necessarily to move.
When I started at Kaycee, we were documenting deer that we actually pulled off, and as a hand, I didn't know where it was going, but we documented every deer that we pulled off the interstate from a car collision. There are times, and we'll get 40 deer a month.
We've had some collaring work in there, and between EHD and vehicle strikes, over 2 years, it accounted for about 30 to 35% of the collared population. So if you look at numbers like that, it can really affect your population.
So then there was this laundry list of all sorts of scale, scope, and style of projects. And so of that shorter kind of big ticket item statewide priority list, I-25 made it to the top of that list because partly the concern generated from the Mule Deer Initiative outreach process and working with local stakeholders, and then partly just the sheer number of roadway mortalities that we saw from that statewide data set.
Funding is a huge challenge, and these projects are extremely expensive. So many of the private donors that have shown a lot of interest and have demonstrated their commitment by providing funds for these crossing projects, they have a real interest because their constituents or their customer base, those folks who they represent, have a real interest in both public safety and in wildlife and protecting wildlife and conserving them for future generations. The optimistic part of this whole challenge is there's a lot of passion and a lot of interest in doing good things here. And so when you bring that, the passion for wildlife and public safety together with an interest from a lot of different partners, I think we can overcome those challenges.
Landowners weren't just a part of this, it was the idea of it, and certainly the support, and they've continued that support with improving kind of the permeability underneath the interstate and existing underpasses. They've improved those gates and fences to allow deer and some pronghorn use underneath them.
The Wildlife Fund means you have a great group of people who are working together with our agencies to do the best we can for wildlife. Wyoming is a wildlife state. We have fewer people and more wildlife than any other state in the country.
Wyoming is leading the way in wildlife crossings. I think we are the blueprint for other states on how to do it, and they're definitely leading the way in that charge. And the Wildlife Fund is a huge reason because of it.
Our organization specializes in putting dollars on the ground to complete meaningful projects that move the needle for Wyoming's wildlife.